Hi friends, welcome to another video in the Network Address Translation Operations and Concepts module. In this video, we'll be discussing Dynamic NAT. If we pull up our definitions from the NAT terminology lesson, we know that a dynamic translation is one where the device chooses the final post-translation attributes, and we know a NAT is a translation that only modifies the layer 3 header, only changes IP addresses. If we combine those, then we have a definition for a dynamic NAT in which the administrator is going to define the pre- and post-translation attributes, aka the pre- and post-translation IP addresses, but the device is going to actually determine the mapping between pre- and post-translation IPs. Now this is very similar to a dynamic PAT with one exception. In a dynamic NAT, we are not translating the ports. Again, a NAT only translates IP address. The effect of this is that we cannot share a single IP address amongst multiple devices. Every device will have its own IP address for the duration of the dynamic NAT translation. So let me show you how that works. Here we have a topology with 4 hosts on the inside and some hosts on the outside, and we're going to configure our router with a dynamic NAT as follows. The dynamic NAT will say NAT everything in the 1077.0/24 network, which is the inside network, to these 3 IP addresses, 54.54.1, .2, and .3. So we have 3 IP addresses to use for all of our hosts on the inside network. Just like before, we'll keep track of the translations that the router makes in the router's translation table. And we'll start off by shooting off a packet from host A. Host A shoots off a packet. The router records the packet as it arrived from host A, and the router assigns host A the .1 IP address. So for the duration of this connection, host A owns the .1 IP address. Host B then shoots off a connection. That packet hits the router. The router then translates the host B's IP address to 54.54.2. Again, the .2 IP address is now owned by host B. And then finally, host C shoots off a connection. Host C's IP address .73 gets translated to 54.5.4.3. And again, for the duration of the connection, this IP address is owned by host C. Now, here we have 3 IP addresses in our dynamic NAT pool, and all 3 hosts have used those 3 IP addresses. So what will happen is when host D now makes a request, there are no IP addresses available for host D to use because all 3 IP addresses are already in use. As a result, host D's packets will be dropped and host D will have no connectivity to the internet. This is one of the fundamental flaws of a dynamic NAT, is that since we are not translating ports, we cannot have multiple devices sharing one IP address at the same time. Therefore, only these 3 hosts will have connectivity through our dynamic NAT. Now, of course, at some point in time, host A is going to finish his connection and release that IP address back to the router. And now the router has regained the .1 IP address that it can use to give to whatever host connects next. If host D now shoots off a packet, notice this is a new packet. Now, host D can be given the .1 IP address, so now host D has connectivity out to the internet. Of course, the side effect of that is, again, we have all 3 IP addresses currently in use, so if host A decides it wants to shoot off a packet, that packet will be dropped because, again, we now no longer have an IP address available for host A to use. So that's the basic rundown of how a dynamic NAT works. I should say, in the industry today, it is very, very rare to use a dynamic NAT. Only the other 3 types of translations end up being used: static NAT, static PAT, and dynamic PAT. But it is important to describe a dynamic NAT so that you have a complete picture of what all the types of translations mean. That said, there are a couple of use cases for a dynamic NAT, and I think it's worth mentioning it so that you know that there was a purpose to this at some point. The first use case is that a dynamic NAT is a bidirectional connection while the connection is active. Here's what I mean by that. Over here, host B was translated to the .2 address. This makes it so that if anything out on the internet makes a request to the .2 address, that the router will forward that packet to host B. So for the duration of this connection, host B owns the .2 address. This is useful for protocols which require a secondary inbound connection back to the client. The most prominent example of which is the FTP protocol. If you haven't studied FTP, the basic rundown of how it works is like this. You have an FTP client that wants a file, and then you have an FTP server that has files available. The way it works is the client will make a connection to the FTP server. That connection will be over port 21 and source port random. This is called the control channel, and it's over this connection that the client and the server decide which file will be transferred. The client tells the server which file to send. Once the client has told the server this, the server then initiates a connection back towards the client. It is from source port 20 to destination port random, and it's over this second channel, the second connection, known as the data channel, that the file is actually transferred. If you recall, if this client was sitting behind a dynamic PAT, dynamic PAT is a unidirectional type of connection, which means this second connection, which is an inbound connection, would fail. Whereas if this was a dynamic NAT, this second connection would totally work, because while the control channel is active, the translation is bidirectional, meaning the secondary data channel will succeed. Of course, this mechanism of FTP that we've just described is referred to as active FTP. It is the original way that FTP was created, but it is the legacy way that FTP is deployed nowadays. Now, FTP is deployed in a mode known as passive FTP. In passive FTP, both the control channel and the data channel are both initiated by the client, which means if the client is sitting behind some sort of dynamic PAT, it's totally fine and FTP will still work. However, before passive FTP was created, all we had was active FTP, and FTP would only work if you were using a dynamic NAT, which allowed the bidirectional communication through it. Either way, this is a use case for a dynamic NAT. Specifically with FTP, it's somewhat a legacy use case, but it's worth knowing about as an example. The other use case, and this is potentially a bit of a stretch, is what I like to call lazy static NAT. The idea here is if you had 20 hosts on the inside and 20 public IP addresses that you needed them all statically NATed to, you can simply configure one dynamic NAT to do all the NAT for you automatically. Of course, that'll only work if you have the same number of hosts as you have IP addresses in the translation. Notice for us, we had 4 hosts and only 3 IP addresses, so we kept running into an issue where one of the hosts didn't have connectivity. If instead we did not have host A, we only had these 3 hosts and these 3 IP addresses, then we would have been able to use this lazy static NAT mechanism as well. The other requirement, though, to do this lazy static NAT is that you have to not care about the exact mapping between private IPs to public IPs. What I mean by that is you'll notice over here, host B was translated to the .2 IP address. Well, 10 minutes later or 20 minutes later or the next day, there is no guarantee that host B will still have the .2 IP address. It might at that point be assigned the .3 IP address or the .1 IP address. Well, if you're in a place where you just need a bunch of internal hosts to have external connectivity, cool, maybe you don't care so much which IP address they have. But if you do care about that, then you cannot use a dynamic NAT in this lazy static NAT mechanism. Either way, as I mentioned before, dynamic NAT is often not used in the industry, and here are the main disadvantages of dynamic NAT, which also explain why they are not used in the industry. The first, and it's a pretty serious one, is that the IP assignments are not deterministic, and we kind of touched on this in the last slide when we discussed lazy static NAT. Over here, host C is translated to the .3 IP address, but there is no guarantee that host C will always have the .3 IP address. So if in the future you're trying to add some sort of access list entry, or if you're trying to add specific rules based upon host C's address, and host C's address keeps changing, you're going to run into a bunch of problems. Moreover, you have situations often with inconsistent connectivity. Remember when we first showed you a dynamic NAT, host A had received the .1 IP address and was able to speak through the internet, and then later on, when the 1 IP address was claimed by host D, host A's connectivity was now being dropped. Configurations which cause inconsistent connectivity are very difficult to troubleshoot and very difficult to nail down exactly what the problem actually is. That, combined with them being non-deterministic, are pretty much sufficient reason to never use Dynamic NAT in the modern world today. However, this course is about making you an expert of NAT, so it is important that we talk through it so that you guys understand what a Dynamic NAT is. So, the key takeaway of this lesson is that a Dynamic NAT is a type of translation in which many hosts can use fewer IP addresses externally, but since we are only doing a NAT and not translating ports, at any given time, each public IP address can only be used by one internal host at a time. The result of this is that Dynamic NAT is very rarely used in the industry. That said, very often, when talking amongst engineers, you'll call something a Dynamic NAT, when in reality you mean Dynamic PAT. If you're trying to be a purist insofar as the terminology you use, if the ports are being translated, you are definitely doing a Dynamic PAT. If multiple hosts are sharing an IP address at the same time, the ports are definitely being translated and you're definitely doing a Dynamic PAT. However, colloquially amongst engineers, sometimes it's simply referred to all as a Dynamic NAT, which unfortunately adds to the confusion of NAT in the industry. Oh well, what can you do? Either way, I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Hey YouTube, want to learn more? Check out the rest of the free network address translation videos. Then, when you're ready to take it a step further, check out these courses which teach you how to configure, verify, and troubleshoot NAT on Cisco routers and firewalls. As always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.